Hello, everyone. Welcome to Maker Chat Live. We have James Kemp here today.
Hi, guys.
Hey, we're going to be doing a fun little chat. And if you guys have any comments, feel free to leave some comments down in the comment section below, and we'll be able to answer them as we get there. However, we are going to start off with a couple general questions. And the first thing I wanted to start off with James says, I think many people might be familiar with your work, people who follow this channel and stuff too. But I think one thing that a lot of people tend to ask is just like, what are like some top 3 tips that you may have for building puppets?
Yeah. So, do you want me to just run through them real quick, or do you want me to kind of one and one and break them down?
Yeah. Why don't we do one and one and break them down?
Yeah. So my first big tip for building puppets, I hate to make this the first one, but it's super important because I did this wrong for years and I had no idea. And I'm so lucky that I don't think I seriously injured myself. But learn about the products you're using, learn about all the chemicals in them, and learn how to protect yourself from them. Because I have heard horror stories about dudes working in special effects shops. They just didn't know any better. And all these crazy chemicals they were using, they were just breathing them in by the lungful. And then at the end of the day, they would go wash their hands in acetone, which was making all these chemicals bleed into their skin. Ooh. And I know so many of them have gotten blood poisoning. Oh, and another thing, Smooth On, the great product that we use to make our eyes and stuff. I found out that the kicker in that, the thing that makes that activate, is cyanide. And if you breathe that in on a even somewhat regular basis, you're going to get cyanide poisoning, and you can start bleeding from your ears. I had a puppet friend tell me this just the other day. He was telling me he was bleeding from his ears. He was in like a constant state of confusion. He was like out on the couch. He said it was super sick. Anyway, it took him forever to figure out what was wrong, but yeah, cyanide poisoning.
Yeah, well, that's the same thing too. Some people don't even realize it, but just regular old epoxy is the thing.
Ooh.
Generally, from what I understand, I'm sure Chaz Vance will hop into the chat and correct us, but pretty much anytime you have two parts of something, you're putting it together, it's going to release some sort of poison into the air that you really shouldn't be breathing in. So make sure you do that outside, or definitely have a respirator.
Yeah.
Or ventilation.
If you don't, you need one of these. I'm sure you've seen them around. Make sure you have one.
Again, it's one thing for us just to hold that up now, but one thing we're well aware of is there's quite a shortage of masks in the world right now. So if that is not an option for you right now, make sure you just do this part outside. Okay? Or have a ventilation system. You probably see them in my video all the time. I got a ventilation tube that I just keep close to it, and I hooked it up. I plugged it into my Google Home thing, so I just can say, "Hey," then
no way.
Hey Google. I don't want to say because it's going to activate it. Hey Google, turn on my air vent, and then it'll turn it on. So I don't even have to run over and switch it on and stuff. It's just ready to go at all times. So that's definitely something important. Yeah, and actually, it's funny. You kind of jumped to one of my ending questions. But I was going to have, what did you wish you knew in the beginning? Not that which kind of answers that.
That's okay. I've got another great one for that.
Oh, okay, good. We'll save that one for later then. But just kind of get your top 3 tips. Oh, now it's going. Hey Google, stop. Sorry. What's another one of your top recommendations you might give?
Another one of my top recommendations, as far as the physicality of a puppet, like when you're building a puppet, you're creating a character. No matter how big or how small, you're creating a character. And you want something that is going to be immediately not only recognizable, but you want people to look at it and go, oh, that's interesting. Oh, look at that. Oh, I like them. So my big tip, and it's so funny, this took me forever to figure out. I couldn't figure out why I liked other people's puppets so much better than my own. I mean, even now, and I'll tell you what I think it is. Make bold choices. Yeah. Make bold choices. This is a character I was putting together. His name is Homeless Joe. And one of the things I really wanted to do with this character is make bold choices. And you know, one of the bold choices here is that he's got that great kind of Flintstones, Hanna-Barbera 5 o'clock shadow. He's got he's bald. He's got that great horseshoe haircut. He's got interesting ear shapes. This big honker, I had a different nose on him, replaced it because I just decided it wasn't interesting enough. Yeah. And I don't know how well you can see it, but he's got a glazed paint job on the eyes. They're kind of blue underneath. And he doesn't have a voice. He's got one of those little throat boxes. So he talks like this. And just all those bold choices, you know, and he's got a foam tongue. It's not in here right now, but just anything you can do to make your character more like visually striking, do it.
I like that. I like that tip because that's a lot of how I work too when I'm building a puppet. I don't usually have a full picture perfect design in my mind. I will switch out a nose and see, oh, does this work better too? Does this work better too? So really, in a lot of ways, that kind of talks about your process in that whether or not you start with a full formal sketch of a design that you have to follow.
And sometimes you do. Sometimes you do. If you have a big client and they have a brand, that's super important. But if it's a project like this for yourself, go big.
That's what I did. I just said that in the podcast that we just released today, is that like when I'm building for myself, I'm a very forgiving client if I change designs along the way. So that's a nice thing about building puppets for yourself. And one thing that I would also recommend to people, just build puppets for yourself. So many people are so hot to try to sell puppets and stuff. You really gotta hone your skills a little bit first more.
Yeah, I definitely didn't set out to be a professional puppet builder.
I don't think anybody does. Yeah, but or actually they might. Who knows? But another thing is, so what's your last tip before we go on to some other things?
I would say my last big tip is oh man, I had 5 of these written down and I don't even see my little cheat sheet. Adam, why don't you give us one of your tips?
Okay, one of my tips, if you want to start, well, this is going to kind of go on to the next thing a little bit, which is fine if we go in. This will kind of tie into your 3 tips, but how to level up your puppet building. Okay, and I'm going to give one of my tips first. Okay, and this might be a little controversial amongst puppet builders, but stop using hot glue. I think, right? Let's clap about that. Clap if you're watching this, please. Clap if you believe. Stop using hot glue. You know, I've years ago I really stopped using. It's fine for quick prototyping and things. There is actually one tiny little aspect that I use it for, which is non-structural, and that's just when I do armature wire, I do like to coat it in it just to keep it from like rusting or something. But and that'll kind of encapsulate it better than even using like shrink wrap or something like that. But other than that, I don't like to use it for the foam, for the seams, you know, unless it's something that's a little bit more of a craft that I'm doing for a quick little video. I've completely cut it out. It's good for prototyping. What do you have to say about that?
The worst part of hot glue is that it leaves those little strings everywhere. I don't care how careful you are with it. I don't care how small the droplet. It just does. It leaves those horrible little strings everywhere. And no, it's not structurally sound. That's another big one. That's a great tip, Adam. I'm glad you brought that up because I see a lot of people doing that. And it's not prudent. It's not going to get you a long-lasting result that you're going to be happy with.
No. It was designed to not be a permanent bond.
Right.
That's what it's made for. It's good for everything, great for nothing, is really what it is. It's kind of like duct tape in that way too, which you shouldn't be using duct tape in your puppets either. I see a lot of people use it actually to connect the mouth plates. For that spot too. That's it just gets dried out and crunchy over time. If you were going to use a tape, which I wouldn't really recommend, is use gaffer's tape because it's fabric based and it doesn't get yucky the way that duct tape does and things like that.
Can I go on one little tangent? The thing you were saying about keeping the mouth plates connected. When I was a kid, when I first started doing this, looking at other puppets blew my mind because I would try to imagine how those mouth plates were connected. I'm talking about when I was like 12 and 13. And what I finally figured out was, in a lot of cases, they're not. There's nothing connecting them. I had that thought never even crossed my mind.
The biggest epiphany, one of the biggest epiphanies I had in puppet building was when I always thought you had to. And I saw one person, I don't even remember who it was, years ago. They didn't have anything. I'm like, oh, well, that's not going to last. That's not. You got to have some sort of a hinge there. No, that's
Yeah.
one thing that can help depending on what style flexible mouth you do. That can give you a lot more range of motion, you know. And actually, how I came to that realization is I wanted something with more flexibility in the mouth. So what I did, I realized if I put the tape there, it's just a hinge. So what I did is I put like a little string on each corner, so it let me kind of go
And let
side
it
to
swing.
side. But then I just took that out and realized it still
The
did that.
felt. All
but
you need. Yep. All you need is the
more-
mouth fabric.
All you need is
Look at Homeless Joe.
Yeah.
You see that? It's because there's that much separation.
Yeah.
Between his plates.
And when they're starting, they butt it together all the way. You don't want to do that. You want to give it some breathing space.
I mean, that's one of those. I feel like that's one of those bold choices you can make to really up your puppet game. Make it more expressive in that way.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, I'm not going to bother grabbing one. Yeah, that shows it perfectly. Yeah.
I'm so sorry to interrupt this, Adam. How do I share this link? I don't see the link to share this live thing.
Yeah, if you want to share it to your page there.
I do. I would love to.
Yeah, if you see the video in your Facebook feed, just hit share. And for people watching too, please share this too. And actually, while we're going,
please
check a look at some of these comments we have here. Some questions from the after years. Hey, we have Jerry. He's kind of on the same page as us. After years of building, I finally made the jump from glue to contact cement. Oh my gosh, the difference is insane. It is insane. I think it just, it also kind of keeps your puppets a little bit lighter. Now we're talking about a fraction of a difference, but think about, how much, just space alone the hot glue takes up. Whereas the contact cement goes on much thinner, and then even a lot of it evaporates off too, which again, do that in a well-ventilated area or outside, or use a respirator. But yeah, that's going to improve. Because another thing, a story you may have heard me say before, if you listen to the podcast, which I know you don't, James. I know you don't. But one little story I'll give is years ago, when I first started, we all first started with hot glue. Because hot glue is a craft type project. And in the beginning, this was more of just a fun little craft thing that we're going to experiment with. And one of my old puppets, I remember I put it in the back of my car, and I'm in Buffalo. In the winters, it's really cold. Summers, it's really hot in the back of my car. And then it just got really hot in the car one day. I came back and the eye slid down like 3 inches. And then it was like on the side of its face. But not only that, and that's not just a matter of, just move it up. No, you got a big glue line here now that's there forever. And that's too. The seams can kind of pop a little bit too. Now they don't pop all the way because the fabric kind of holds it together like a shell. However, though, it kind of just the structural integrity
is not sound at all.
Not sound, especially if it's something like that. Do you have another tip for leveling up your puppet builds, James?
I remembered a great one. This is one of the coolest tips I've ever gotten. I mean, ever. And it's one of those things that's almost so simple that you're just like, oh, duh, why didn't I think of that? And it was Jim Krupa telling everybody to put shrink wrap on arm rods. And I mean, it has totally leveled up my arm rod game. Look at that. I mean, so the shrink wrap, if you're not familiar, it is a tube that is wider than you need. Oh, yes, perfect. It's a tube, and you slide your metal rod into that tube. You either hit it with a heat gun, or I make a bunch of these, put them on a cookie sheet, and throw them in the oven at 200 degrees for 15 minutes. Take them out. Yeah. I just do a bunch at one time. It's so easy. And the thing I like about that over a heat gun is that you're never going to have to worry about doing it wrong and it bubbling anywhere. When you put it, when you put it in the oven,
that's nice. People ask me that all the time. And first of all, one thing I want to say off the bat is there's no one way to do it. There's many different ways to do it, and different things work for different projects. Now, shrink wrap, I have a love-hate relationship for it. I use it sometimes, but to be honest, I don't use it that much. And there's a couple reasons for it. Where I do like it is I like it in theater puppets for stage. Because again, they can really get abused a lot on stage. They get thrown around almost like props, and then they won't scratch up. Okay,
right.
But the reason why I don't really like it for film style puppets, because generally you want your arm rod to be as skinny as possible without losing the integrity of the metal. So
Yeah.
by getting the skinniest rod you have that's strong enough, and then adding that, you're doubling or sometimes even tripling the width of your arm rod. It depends on what you value. If you need it to be small, generally it just makes it. It's just like it's like having a pencil line and then taking a Sharpie marker and just like going right across it.
Let me bring this up, Adam.
Push back.
Because you may this is an interesting topic. I recently ran into a problem like you're describing.
Yeah.
I had bought like 100 feet of this great shrink wrap.
Yeah.
And I ran out. And so I had to reorder. And do you know, when I reordered, well, it's around here somewhere, but the stuff that I reordered, even though it said it was the same diameter, and it was, the wrap itself was thicker. And I compared it to one of these, which was the old one. And sure enough, the wrap itself was thicker. So, I mean, that's not even that is literally 1/32 of an inch on both sides. So like it's a 30-second.
I've gotten some thick stuff because I've experimented with a couple. Every single one that I have found has added quite a bit of thickness. I almost think like the rubber handle on a tool. It just
Oh gosh, gross.
Yeah, no, that'd be no good. Yeah,
so maybe try again. Maybe shop around.
Sure, you share the link with us with the one that
I will.
Yeah, so then you can share some of the wealth.
Well,
but
I will, and
I will agree with you. I love all the advantages of using it because again, it's not going to get scratched up the same way. Even if you start bending your arm rods too, it kind of makes it a softer bend rather than making these sharp bends in the same way. There's a lot of benefits to it, but again, generally, I don't.
You're a paint guy.
Oh, I'm a paint guy. Yeah. Oh, and also another thing too is a little hot take, a little hot tip is especially for smaller puppets. I sometimes use bicycle spokes. Okay. Now it's hard to get really long bicycle spokes because they're really strong. Think about it. They're meant to hold up a bike. Okay, but you can actually get black ones. And I believe,
really,
yeah, and it does. They're pretty scratch resistant too, because they're meant to be on a bike, which is supposed to be driving through stones and stuff on the road.
Yeah, sure.
So they hold up pretty well. But again, they tend to not come in very long lengths. So I only use them for like puppets like this, the small little neck puppets, and maybe other really tiny characters. But yeah, that's another thing. But another thing I wanted to talk about. Now, this may not be considered necessarily for leveling up your puppets as much as it is just there's a couple of ways of thinking about it. And here's a reason why I would consider it leveling up is talking about patterning your puppets versus sculpting, doing foam sculpture. Okay, and now you can get the same and great results both ways, but I think we're kind of on the same page as this is because one thing I love about patterning is, first of all, it can save you a lot of time for the future. If you have to make a similar character or at least a similar base, you don't have to start over again with another sculpture. You have that pattern that you made before, and then you can use it in the future for other projects, which is one humongous thing too. And another thing too is, again, not everyone, but some people, it can be tough to get a sculpture perfectly symmetrical. Whereas when you pattern something, you just flip the pattern, and then you have something that is perfectly symmetrical. Now, generally, you can't get as many, extreme shapes depending on the scale. I'm talking more about the scale that we tend to work in. But then that's why I love doing a little bit of additive foam on top of it. Like that's what I did for the Figment puppet that I did recently.
Yeah, those great mouth corners and
that's what it was. The mouth. So the whole puppet was a foam pattern, except for the eyebrows and then the foam cheeks and stuff. And man, it made it look like something that would have taken much longer to sculpt than it was to just pattern and just put those little pieces together. So what is your theory on patterning versus sculpting?
Well, I'm so glad you asked, Adam, because I have a lot of opinions about that. I am too.
I know we're snobs, aren't we? Puppet building.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. I run into the same problem with sculpted puppets that I do with looking at anyone else's puppets. I see sculpted puppets that are not symmetrical. They're not perfect. and I love them.
Yeah.
But I could never bring myself to make one. And I know that sounds horrible.
Yeah.
But the thing that I love about patterning is that, you know, not only can you do it with a similar character in the future, but if you have a client and they want 2 puppets at the same time, you need to make sure they are absolutely identical.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And not only that, but let's say you build one for them and then 6 months later they come back and say, oh, hey, we've decided we want a second puppet. Then you're like, oh, let me just reach into my giant drawer of patterns. Yeah. And there it is. Yeah. So I like that about it. And now let me say one other thing about it. And this really goes along. This was my leveling up tip that I couldn't remember. Beveling. Learn how to bevel foam. It's amazing that this is a skill. Look, I've been building puppets for 15 years. And this is something that only last year did I really learn and realize what you have to. Now, when I'm talking about beveling, I'm talking about cutting pieces of foam at an angle. Typically, you would cut it straight on. You're cutting at an angle. What that does, it's like pieces of wood when you're putting together a cabinet. Foam has thickness. Foam has weight. And you can't put 2 flat pieces together like this and expect them to do this. They have to be cut such that they will do this. Adam, could you throw up those 2 pictures I sent you on the screen this morning? And now I'm going to show you the difference between a not beveled mock-up. Thank you. There it is.
Let me get rid of that.
Great. So this is a mock-up to a character, and all the patterns are the same, okay? All the patterns are exactly the same as the next image you're going to see. But with this image, all the foam pieces have been cut flat. Now this one, this is the final product. You can see that in the appropriate places that I marked, the pieces have been beveled so that they fit together at a much more extreme angle. This is another way that you can level up your puppets by making these bold choices. Choose these extreme angles, learn how to make them, and learn how to use them to your ability. And because that's one of the things that I struggled with too, Adam, was that patterned puppets often have kind of a softer appearance than sculpted ones, but this is another great way that you can kind of add to that.
Yeah. One thing I'll just say on that too is like, because I hate for people to just start, beveling everything in general.
Yeah, don't bevel everything.
If you want a circle, if you want to create a sphere, there's no beveling involved.
No. Yeah,
you want it all to be straight. So I mean, I'm sure that's one of the things people are thinking of now. Well, how do you know when to do it and when not to do it? And another thing, people just ask one of the most common questions I get all the time, which I answer all the time too. I'd be interested to hear your perspective on that. Is they say, where do you make the lines? How do you know where to make the lines, Mr. James?
Highs and lows.
Your answer.
Highs and lows. Yeah. So when you have your sculpture, if you've already done your sculpture, what you're looking for are highs and lows. You want to find all of those most kind of extreme points, and that's where you're going to put a line, because you have to realize that when you put that pattern back together, not only is that where the foam will meet, but that's where there'll be a line of barge cement, and that barge cement really, in a lot of ways, helps to keep that structure so strong. So you want to try to reinforce these strongest points while still making sure your shape is accurate. So as far as beveling, everything needs to be cut perfectly flat and level always, except for when you're trying to reach these extreme meeting points, like with a cheek. You know, you've got the head comes down, and then, it goes out. So if you have an out that is that extreme, then yeah, you're going to have to bevel them like this so that they go out from each other, if that makes sense.
No. I mean, that's what I say. You know, another thing I just tend to say too is just like experiment. Like the first time I did it, I realized once you start putting it together, like, oh, this didn't quite come together the way I thought. And also, another philosophy I have is I try to do less than I think that I need, because of the nature of the foam. And generally, the shapes we're creating are primary or secondary shapes.
Right.
They're not overly detailed. So you can take advantage of the softness of the foam. Because one thing I'd say, a little bit of a read on James Kemp, is, in my opinion, for some of the shapes that you have, you seem to have like a ton of lines, probably more than you probably necessarily need.
Probably so.
Probably
Yeah,
so.
honestly, probably so. I mean, I talked about this the other day. I mean, this is for a pom-pom.
Thank you for holding that up because I was literally just searching for it on Facebook right now. I'm gonna say this all in good fun before you tell people what that is. Hold that up.
Okay.
Because I have to say, you know how they say don't reinvent the wheel. Okay. Now a wheel is very similar to a sphere in a way. Let's compare it to a sphere. Don't reinvent the sphere. You know, you can find because that is James's pattern for a sphere that he made.
But it's not a sphere.
It's not?
It is oblong. It's not a perfect sphere. It is oblong. It's not. It's kind of this kind of shape.
Okay.
Right. And I know that you can't really tell, but here's what it looks like covered. Right. It's supposed to be like a hair pom-pom, but I just really wanted that particular shape.
Of course. Yeah.
So I decided that instead of carving a bunch of foam balls, I would just pattern the damn thing once and then be able to repeat it perfectly.
I wouldn't recommend carving a bunch of spheres like that. I was just gonna say, like, I mean, for people who want to make a sphere or even that kind of slightly grape-like shape, I was like, go to Google, type in beach ball pattern, something like that. It's like it seemed like a little bit of a reinventing of the wheel, and that's another thing I recommend for people too. Like one of my first tutorials that I made years and years ago,
cutting up the hat.
A video that I kind of regret, not because I was cutting up a hat, just because it's like, oh my god, just look at me, what a doofus I was. But yeah, there's patterns all around us, and a lot of times you don't have to reinvent the wheel like that. If you want to make a spherical head, again, look up beach ball pattern. You'll find it'll probably look like this kind of a wedge, and it'll say cut 6 pieces, or it'll say cut 8 pieces. That's what it'll be. And experiment with that. What happens if it says cut 6 pieces, but you only put 5 in? Guess what you get? You get something a little bit more.
You get a weird kind of football. Yeah,
it doesn't go together perfectly because that's not what it's designed to do. But that's what I really want people to do. Is so many people are what I'm going to call pattern junkies. Every single every single puppet that you post, they're like, "Do you have a pattern for that? Do you have a pattern for that? Hey, can you show me the pattern? Do you have a pattern?" It's like, oh my goodness. Okay, I could give you the pattern, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to end up with something even similar because of the way you put the pattern together. If they don't know that certain edges are beveled, like the way you were talking about earlier, or not understanding that there was other sculptural elements on top of it, which more and more I'm doing that all the time now. And it seems like you do that sometimes as well. No?
I'm trying to. I'm experimenting with it. Yeah, it's been fun. I just did this cute little girl, and I gave her, I mean, it's not too extreme, but I gave her this cute little bottom lip piece. Yeah. And it's just fun. It's something more you can do to make bolder choices. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I agree with that 100%. Let's see. I think I have one more. Oh, this was another topic I wanted to do before we start getting into more audience questions. Keep piling them in down below. If it gets way too buried, feel free to repost your comment if you need to. But I wanted to talk about
spam it.
Longevity with your puppets. What can you do to make your puppets last longer? Because I think this is a topic that people don't talk about much. And I think we actually already covered some tips that can do that, but I wanted to hear your first thoughts before I jump into it.
Oh, well, thank you. I have a great take on this because I had to learn from experience, which is what any of us are doing. I mean, that's all we can do. I was on a shoot. This was much earlier in my career, but I was on a shoot, and it was an outside shoot, and I had built the puppet for it, but it was a multi-day shoot, and it was hot. It was hot. Admittedly, it was hot. It was in the summer, and I was sweating up a storm, and my finger was rubbing against the front piece of foam that's inside the head. And the longer that this shoot went on, I started to notice that foam right there was starting to get eaten away. And I was like, oh my God, I've never even thought of this, just because I've never put a puppet in this particular situation. So ever since then, I do anything I can to reinforce the puppets. So like one great thing you can do is create these little neck rings. So this protects the body of the puppet, right? Your arm goes up into here. It's not rubbing against the body of the puppet. And another great thing, what I do, let me see if I can find, oh, here we go. So this is a mock-up to a little rat head that I'm making. And so here's the final foam one. It hasn't been put on the mouth plate yet, but here's the final foam one. And what I'm going to do, I'm literally going to flip this bad boy inside out. Okay. I'm going to, I don't like using spray adhesive. I'll use barge and some fabric. I'll turn this bad boy inside out. I'll glue some fabric down to here and then turn it back the right way. And then bam, you've got an insulated
What
puppet
kind of
head.
fabric do you put?
Typically fleece, because fleece is thick. Now, you don't want to put it everywhere because you want to try to let some of that heat escape still, but fleece is nice and thick. So I don't want something that's just going to rub away. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's a good idea to put something in there, some sort of a lining. Sometimes they'll line the whole puppet. That's actually what I was just writing down as a tip for longevity, is to put lining in your puppet, because it puts a barrier between you and the foam. And a lot of foams break down, but I'm going to give some recommendations on the things that foams that don't really break down as much. But yeah, having a lining, and I it's fine if you use fleece for lining. I wouldn't really recommend it though, because it is a fabric that can be kind of absorbent, and generally you don't want anything that's gonna like absorb sweat, because that's something that can help deteriorate your puppets even more. Sure. So one thing that I like to do is I like to use like a
linen.
A what?
Oh, I was going to say just like a cotton, like a muslin, like a linen.
Oh, so sometimes I use kind of two things, depending on kind of what I have on hand. Okay. A lot of times I will just use a cotton, like a black fabric or something like that. But another thing I actually like to use is like a satin with a little bit of stretch to it, because it feels really nice going in and out, nice and smooth too. Like a very thin, slightly stretched satin. Or even,
so are you doing like a
lining material? There's fabric that was made for lining jackets. That's also something that's really nice to use. So that doesn't tend to have any flexibility to it, which is not always what you need.
Right. So this is really cool. This is a little mouth grip that I'm working on, and you can see the finger strap here. But underneath this finger strap, there is a piece of foam that you can still see the foam on the sides there, kind of.
Yeah, a little speed bump.
It's just a speed bump. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And it's sanded down smooth here, but you can see that I covered it in, I used some barge, and I covered it in just a linen lining so that, the fingers don't wear away at the foam.
Yeah, no, that's right. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. You said you lined that foam?
It's this foam, this block of foam, that's covered in linen.
Oh, it is. Oh, good. Yeah, that'll make it last much, much longer. Because for a lot of people, I see them use just raw EVA foam for the speed bump, and that'll kind of wear away in time. So yeah, it's great to line it with fabric. Or another thing I like to do is I'll just cover it with a coat of Creature Cast after it's applied. Creature Cast is an amazing resource. I use it all the time in my puppets for things like that. I use it for a lot of animal noses as well. It's amazing. And what it kind of is, it's a substitute for latex. It works and applies just like liquid latex, but the problem with latex is it breaks down over time because of sunlight and just oxidation from the air alone, I think, and just time. But that stuff is neoprene based, and it will last forever. It's actually what I use to coat all of my puppets for my Little Shop puppets. Those were all raw foam sculptures that I just coated in a bunch of layers of Creature Cast until I build up a nice thickness. And also, it comes in different thicknesses as well. And it looks like Mr. James Kemp has some himself.
This is what it looks like.
Oh, you have rigid.
I was doing it for a horn. It was for a horn.
Oh, that would be great for a horn. Yeah. I haven't used the rigid. Did you like it? How rigid was it?
It was fantastic. It was very rigid. It was still kind of flexible, but you wouldn't want. It was so rigid that if you tried to flex it, it would leave a crease. Let me put it that way. But really? It was so good because I didn't need it to move. It was so good because after I applied like 30 coats, and after I had done that, it was so easy to sand.
And you can cast it too, which is nice.
Yeah, that makes. I hadn't even thought about it, but yeah.
So I haven't used the rigid. I pretty much have used semi-rigid for everything that I did, because the puppet I used it to coat puppets too, and so I saw.
Are you saying you're putting it like on the inside of the phone, like basically?
Oh, for a cat, I haven't casted it. It can
no. For lining the inside of a puppet.
I haven't used it for lining the inside of a puppet. I've used it just to line the foam speed bump. I've used it for that. Just to give it some more body. And I've used it to coat my little shop puppets were all coated in it. And again, another thing I do too is like, actually, I think do I have him here? No, I don't have Howard here. My wolf puppet, he's got a black nose, which is actually made out of felt, which I typically wouldn't use felt for a finish on a puppet. Not always, depending on what it is, because it can kind of wear away. But if you take that felt and then you coat it in creature cast, it has a really cool, like dog animal like nose to it, especially for something that's more, not creature like, more, cartoony, puppety. So it looks really, really nice.
Interesting.
Yeah. So let me see here. And why don't we get into some of these questions?
Yay, write them in.
Are you able to see them as well?
Yes, I do. I see them.
We have a wonderful question from a future guest in a coming up episode. It's John Little.
Oh, I love him.
How do you build a puppet? I need to know. Obviously, that's sarcasm. We're gonna have John on for one of these chats in the coming weeks. But let's see here. We have another question here. Oh my gosh, there's a lot. We had someone ask where to get that shrink wrap stuff. Did you get yours at McMaster Car? Did you get it on Amazon or something?
Don't
know. It's hard.
You know what?
Orders all over the place.
I want to say, well, if you'll remember, there were two. I just bought 2 batches of that shrink wrap. One was right and one wasn't. And I got to be honest with you. I think the one that I bought from McMaster Car was the one that was too thick.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, really? That's where I did get mine too. So maybe that was the problem I was having.
Yeah. Best I can recall, what I bought from them was what I didn't like. It was chunky.
You remember the other place?
Yeah, I think I don't have the link, but I'm pretty sure I bought it through somebody on Amazon, I think.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, we'll take a look and we'll try to put it in the comments below later. We have Kevin, who is going to hopefully be another future guest.
Kevin. Kevin, I love Kevin.
Yeah, he's great. He says you guys are awesome. And fantastic hair. Well, I'm glad there's there's very different.
I'm waiting for mine to gray like Adam's.
Oh yeah, it's silver.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Okay. Here's a great question. How can a puppeteer make money, especially during this pandemic time?
Go to Goodwill, get something sexy, and find a good street corner.
Oh gosh. No. First of all, there's 2 ways to answer that. The literal answer of puppeteer from a more performing standpoint or builder standpoint, which are they can be similar, and there's generally a lot of crossover. But if you are a performer, especially if you're doing your own shows now, it is hard because a lot of these shows involve being at a theater or even doing school shows and groups of people, birthday parties, whatever level you're at. It could be a while till that goes back to normal. And as far as actually making money from it, I see people are live streaming a lot now. I think it's not impossible to make money doing the live streaming, but it is very difficult. We're not making money. Look at what you're pointing at.
Just that we're doing a live stream.
Oh yeah, that we're doing live. Yeah, yes, we did not make any money from this live stream.
Well, and that's why I said what I did. I didn't mean for it to be a distasteful joke, but like puppeteers, there is no puppeteer work right now. Like that's kind of what I mean,
Yeah, and one thing I was just going to say is if you are live streaming shows, I think some people will get to a point where they're frustrated with it because they're not making money. But what I would say is if you are doing live stream puppet shows, just keep in mind, I hate to say it, is don't necessarily do it for a financial gain as much as it is for brand recognition. So let's say you send a link to all the schools in your area saying, here's a free live stream puppet show for your students, and then you do one and it goes well, maybe next year when everything's back to normal and they need to hire entertainment for their school, they'll remember, hey, remember these people? They did this live stream show for us and they didn't charge us anything. And, you're, again, it's that brand recognition, getting people familiar with you and your work in a way that they might not have otherwise been able to. And not only that, because a lot of people have problems with the whole free show thing. And so you'd lose a lot of time and money if you went to all the schools and did one free show first. But doing one live stream that they can all see now in a time of need, and then next year when they're going to hire you, I don't know if that's great advice, but that's probably what I would do if I was trying to make a living out of doing like local performances.
I got to be honest, I'm kind of impressed with that answer. That was a great answer. No, I mean.
I appreciate it.
Well, just the idea of doing it once to a mass audience as opposed to trying to do it for free to each individual.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just
all the time ask for free shows, and now is the best time to do it.
It is. It's goodwill. It's just community goodwill.
Sure, it is community goodwill, but now is the best time to do it without overly investing in things the way that we sometimes do. And now if we want to try to answer that from a puppet building perspective, I mean, the reality is in the best market ever, it's tough to make money as a puppet builder, And the thing I would just say is just build. I mean, it's not going to get you money, but just build puppets for yourself. Use this as a time to hone your skills because a lot of other shows are shutting down. Think of who are the people that buy puppets. Right? A lot of them are performers. If performers aren't performing, they're not going to buy puppets now. But now the one caveat to that is this. Some people probably want to start a lot of digital shows. I've actually had a couple messages from people saying like, hey, since everything's locked down, we want to do an educational thing and we want to use a puppet. Can you make us a puppet? So, in a way that may have kind of leveled out the people who weren't looking for puppets before aren't now, but now there's new people looking for puppets. So as far as that type of work, it's been kind of the same for me, which is not good, but at least consistent. So I don't know if you've had any experience with that.
No, I would say the exact same thing. I'm so lucky. I'm so fortunate that kind of right before all this went down, I already had several projects that were already locked in. So
did you lose any too?
I'm sorry?
Did you lose any?
No, No, I didn't lose any. I'm so lucky. I'm so thankful.
I did lose two.
Oh, I know a lot of people.
One of them was really good too, but that's okay. I mean,
hopefully it'll circle back around.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, John Little says it's a great time to learn other styles of puppet building, because that's one thing I get. Gosh, what? I wish we said this from the beginning. Is we're talking about a pretty narrow form of puppetry. Puppetry is one of the most diverse art forms in the world, and it's still has a lot of innovation in itself. And we are talking about just kind of our own life and lived experiences with the puppetry that we do, which if you're watching this, chances are you are familiar with that. Okay, let's see here. Do you have a favorite? I guess this is to you, James. Do you have a favorite type of puppet that you perform with?
I definitely do. I really like live hand puppets. They're just too much fun. There's just so much expression. There are too many options as a performer, because that's really what I guess I consider myself. I am a puppet builder, and I am popular for, or I guess more popular for that. But
you're a great performer.
Performing is what I love.
I think I remember, man, probably like close to 10 years ago, we were talking, and again, don't take this the wrong way. I think I was saying like, dude, don't waste your time making puppets. You're a performer. Like, dig into that. But obviously, we all know it's good to be able to do both.
Yes.
And that's the true recommendation I would give people. But you just can tell when somebody has it, And I saw your performance, like, wow, he's got it. Lean into that. I remember I think I said close to 10 years ago.
Well, let me tell a little story real quick, Adam. This is not something I have really ever publicly shared, but I think this is a great lesson to anybody. In 2013, Sesame Workshop announced that they were going to do a workshop, a puppeteer workshop, and that they were going to take like 50 people. And I saw this brief, and of course, to a kid like me, I mean, it's a dream come true, even like seeing something like this. But the more I thought about it, I just thought, honestly, you know what? Like, there are so many other like probably better puppeteers than me. Like, who am I? And it was October of 2013 because the Breaking Bad finale was airing, and Adam Krutinger, for whatever reason, was like, "Call me on the phone, man. Let's chat." And I was like, "All right, cool." So I called Adam that night, and he was like, "So the Sesame Workshop audition, are you going to audition for that?" And I was like, "I don't think so, man." And he goes, "Oh, why? You definitely should." And I was like, "I don't know, man. I just feel like there are people better than me." And he was like, "Dude, I'm telling you, you got it. Do it. Just submit the audition, blah, blah, blah." So long story short, I did it, and I was so fortunate. I was so lucky that I was one of the people they took for that workshop, and that blew my mind because had I not taken Adam's advice and taken the chance,
You're telling you, like, what is like? There's not a guarantee you're going to get in. It's like you're acting like you're going to get in no matter what. Like, if you don't submit, you've got no chance. Okay, if you do submit, you might not get in anyway, and then you're right back where you were anyway.
Right.
You lose nothing from trying. So yeah, I'm really glad that you did. And again, it paid off that you were.
That was such a huge lesson for me as a person that I have always tried to remember ever since.
You miss all the shots you don't take.
You miss all the shots you don't take. Yep.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's a great story. Yeah. How was your experience with that?
There were elements of it that were wonderful.
Okay, we'll leave it there.
It was great. It was a great experience.
Good. We have another question here from another person who will be a future guest on this new show as well, and that is Chase Woolder. Do you know Chase?
James? I have to admit I'm familiar with the name, but I really don't.
Oh man, he is a true artist, man. He is amazing puppeteer, amazing, very diverse puppeteer and puppet builder as well. And his question is, what tool or materials is most exciting for you right now? Nice question too.
That's a fantastic question. Adam, why don't you take this one first?
Oh geez. One thing for me is I try to experiment all the time with anything I can get my hands on. I look at a lot of other another thing I try to do too is I tend to not look at other puppet builders that much. I like to look at all different types of makers and think, like, how can I apply that to my puppet building? And one of my favorite examples of this was my banana puppets that I made. Those banana puppets were inspired. Actually, I have one right here. Let me just grab it. And actually, I'm planning on doing a tutorial on my channel on how to make one of these banana puppets. This process, now obviously the mechanism aspect was completely inspired from learning from Jim Krupa. However, the materials and the process to building this was completely inspired by one of my favorite artists. He's an amazing maker. I follow him on Instagram. His handle is Gummy Fetus on Instagram. His name is Jason Freeney. Amazing. Jason Freeney. I saw his process for making sculptures, and I was like, I think that would work for a puppet. And I did it, and it worked amazing. So what this is, and again, it's one of my favorite materials. It's called Magic Sculpt. Now, the first time I heard that, it scared me because I was thinking of model magic. It is not model magic. It's a Magic Sculpt, and pretty much what it is, it's a water-based 2-part epoxy. So you can put it on and smooth it out with just water while it's curing. And then afterwards, it's like stone, but you can still sand it and cut into it and work into it. So what I did is I sculpted out of insulation foam a banana, covered it with the putty epoxy, smoothed it out. Then I sanded it. But then I had to hollow it out. So then I cut out a big hole in the back, bored it out, all the foam, put all the mechs inside it, and then glued that piece back and then sanded it down. And it is a robust, very robust little puppet guy. And really happy with him. Yeah, so Magic Sculpt is one that I love, and actually, again, like I said, I'm going to be doing a tutorial of that on my channel at some point. However, I have 3 projects lined up first. So probably realistically beginning of summer for people who are going to be messaging me daily, asking me when. What's one for you?
So this is a great question. This is a very thoughtful question. One that I've kind of recently learned about was back in November, I had to do a project for a horror movie, and a friend of mine and I sculpted this little baby bird, and we didn't know what medium to sculpt it in because we had to be able to make a mold of the sculpture, right?
Yeah.
So we didn't know what to use. Well, I was introduced to this stuff actually by John Kennedy, even though I didn't understand what it was at the time. This is called Super Sculpey. And I don't know how similar it is to what you're talking about, Adam. This is just a one part. It comes just like this.
You have to make it, right?
Yes, but that's the crazy part is that
you love baking puppet parts.
I love it. I any chance to fire the ovens up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But it was so unique to me because not only can you use this stuff to make a mold. I saw that there was a question. Mel Campbell has a question. I'm just tying it into this one. It says, what other than wood can I use to make molds for vacuum forming?
Yep.
You can use this.
Yeah.
Super Sculpey. It's incredible. You make whatever shape you want. It's so pliable and easy to work with. And then you just put it in the oven and it's rock hard. It's so solid. So the thing that amazes me about this is that not only do people use this to make sculptures and then make molds, but John, the futurist that he is, was using this directly to make little puppet parts. I mean, he was making little like animal noses, little bows on clothing. I mean, just stuff I had never even considered.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Was blowing my mind. Super Sculpey, super incredible product.
Those little detail things, that's a really good idea to do that. You're not going to find them anywhere else. But just as for, again, to answer that other question here about the vacuum forming, that's another thing that I have used for the Magic Sculpt as well. That's what this is. And this was the little mold I made for the eyelids of the Baby Yoda I'm working on now. So his eyelids were vacuum formed over this buck that I made out of the Magic Sculpt, which was really handy as well. But yeah, that's great. I think I had another one here that there was another good question too. Let me see here. Here's a question I get all the time. I wanted to hear you for this too. What's good to use to make a long hair other than yarn?
Oh, I hate this question. only because there's really no good answer.
Well, the reason why there's no good answer is because it would be very contingent on the design. If you showed me a sketch first and say, what would you use to make this style of long hair for this character? I could answer it much more cleanly. So, and you know, I guess I'll start first since I'm already talking. You know, for one style that I've done is just to do sculpted hair. I did this character years and years ago with a long ponytail, and I used the same process that I used in my tutorial on how to make puppet hair. I sculpted it out of foam, and then I covered it in fur, and then styled it. And then it just worked because the foam structure was the shape of the ponytail. But another thing I like to use, like for when I did my Avenue Q puppets years ago, I used a nice wig. Using a nice wig will work very well as well. And there are other options too. I was wondering what is your gut reaction on this, or what have you done in the past?
So yeah, it's super contingent on what kind of project you're doing. I had done a girl with a very long ponytail for Kids on the Block, very long ponytail. And all it was is I had just I know what you're laughing at, Adam.
I know you know what you're laughing.
And anyway, the ponytail was so long, and obviously you couldn't have actual hair fibers that were that long. So I just patterned fur to go over this. Well, really, it was almost like a big fur tube. But when you brush it and fill it with a little polyfill, it looks good. It looks like a ponytail. Or sculpted hair, like Adam said, that's another fantastic way to achieve certain hair effects. Again, it's so dependent on the project. But my favorite, if the project calls for it, my favorite is a wig. And I'm so blessed that my girlfriend is a professional hairstylist. So even though I don't know anything about hair or hairstyles or hair lines or any of that,
your head.
Yeah, I don't know anything about this. I mean, she's taught me so much about how to take care of that even. I mean, just so it's so nice to, I guess what I'm getting at is if you can swing it, get a wig and take it to a professional.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that definitely works. Yeah,
it's a
like
great option.
or also, if you are still designing the character, or if you have a lot of flexibility in the design, shop for the wig first.
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
find a nice wig that you think has a lot of character to it and design the character around that. I know that's not always an option to work, but again, it can serve you well. Here, I don't know if you would have any thoughts on this. It kind of ties into a little bit of what we were talking about before, but what's the best way to get started doing birthday parties, school shows, community fairs, etc.? How did you start performing? 'Cause I know you've done some live shows in the past. I don't know if you still do them much anymore.
I don't now. I was doing the first thing I was doing was, actually, the first thing I did was the puppet ministry at my church. I was like 12, and they started the puppet ministry the year that I got into puppets. So it was just this crazy fit. And we had this incredible woman who was leading it, and she was pouring so much of her own money into this thing. So we always had nice puppets and blah, blah, blah. And nice, scripts and soundtracks and just stages and all kinds of, I mean, it was great. It was great. So that was a great way for me to really get good with a live audience every week, new material every week. But as far as asking me, like, what can you do? It just depends. What is your definition of started? How do I get started? What is started? Started to me is grab a sock and throw on a song and then lip sync in the mirror. You know what I mean? Or, but if you want to get started performing in front of people,
So there's starting with nothing and starting with,
right.
some knowing the mechanics behind performing puppetry.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, yeah, but I guess I just mean started as in like what level of professionalism? Like, are you asking how do I get started? Like, how do I learn to use a puppet, or how do I start doing this professionally?
My guess is they're asking, like, how do you get your first gig?
I would say just like make YouTube content, but don't expect anybody to see it. You're just making it to get good. And from there, maybe you want to put together a 15-20 minute show and start going to libraries. Libraries, they're always looking for entertainment like that. And especially if you're willing to do it for free, oh my gosh, they would love to have you. Yeah. So that's a fantastic outlet.
Yeah. I'll give a little recommendation on that, because I don't do too many live shows with puppets anymore, though I used to. But before that, I started doing magic shows, and I remember, getting those first shows, and that is difficult. But the best way to start is starting off doing shows for friends and family. Like I remember doing like my little cousin's birthday. It was one of my first shows, and a parent's coworker has a kid. Oh, can you come and just do puppets for my daughter's house, something like that. And the thing is, like, even though that might not be a paid gig, it might not be. There's other people in the audience who are like, "Oh, where'd you get this guy? I want to hire this guy for my party too." So in the beginning, and I know some people are probably cringing, like, "No, don't say do free shows." But again, if it's for friends and family in the beginning, that's a good way to not just flex your performing muscles, but to get a little bit of the dangerous word exposure to some other people. And again, I'm saying when you're starting with no performing ability, I remember my very first magic show I ever did. Someone asked me to do it before I even had a show together. So I created a show for that. And I put together like 20 magic tricks to do this 40-minute show. And I was so green that like I finished all the tricks in 10 minutes. And oh no, what now? But again, luckily it was for a family friend, and it was a very forgiving audience, and they just wanted me to. Again, it was more of a gift for me to be able to do that first performance in front of real people. But I took away a humongous lesson from that. And and toward the end of I still do magic shows here and there for friends and family, but once I had an established show, like I said, I had 20 tricks in there that first time. When you're beginning too, that's what you do, is you like try to cram in as much as you can, but then make it more about the story, because at the end I only had 4 magic tricks in an hour-long show, but there was a lot of story to it, and it was much more exciting, even though there was less happening, and that can directly apply to your puppet shows as well. Let's get in here. Do we have another? Let's check the most recent stuff we have here. Actually, one more thing is, I have a question for you before I get into these questions. I'll look through them as you're answering. Is like, I think for people who are really there's different levels of where people are in their careers, sometimes, especially as makers. The point where like you're starting, where you're happy with your work. There's a point to where you are better, and you're like, wow, I was happy with my work before that doesn't look as good as I thought it was.
Oh, yeah.
I think you are definitely at a point where you realize where you came from. Was there a point to where that transition like happened or started to happen, where it was from something that was as a hobby to something that you started to take very seriously and as a craft? Like that realization, it was like, there's actually something to this for me. Because
Yes.
again, and I'll put a little bit. I don't know if it has to do with relationships with other people, because it seems like, and this is just me talking from seeing you peripherally, everything that you do. It seems like David Jose was a big part in kind of
Huge. He was like the part.
You seem more polished than you were. That came out kind of wrong, but like, wasn't he involved in some of your first big?
Oh, absolutely. I was not. Yeah.
Didn't he build your website for you or something?
He did not, but the guys at the company he works with, Sublime Media Group, they did.
Yeah, facilitated, through the connection.
David Jose gave me my first job puppeteering on television. It was for a commercial. It was a fence supply company in the middle of Kentucky. I mean, it was just a weird thing, but we did it, and we made it as good as it could be, and it's a cute little spot. I think really the point that all changed for me was when I did that. That was huge for me. Doing that first commercial was huge. It really made me feel like maybe there's something to this. But the one that really kind of solidified it for me, I had been out of the house for less than a year, and I got the call from KFC to do Puppets of Colonel Sanders.
Oh, yeah.
They were great. I love them. And the company was super happy with them. And I guess the real turning point for me, this is a horrible look. This is a horrible little anecdote, but
you love horrible anecdotes.
Yeah, I wanted, when they came to me with the job, I was so excited about the prospect of going to that next level that I way underquoted them on the job. I think I quoted them $1,600 for 2 identical puppets, right? And the producer, I had a great working relationship with these people, and then as soon as the shoot was done, the producer pulls me to the side and he goes, "James, hey, we love your work, man. You did great today. You're such a good, we're super happy with the performance, everything. The puppets look fantastic, but I gotta tell you, I think you should be charging a little more for your puppets." And I was like, "Well, I underbid myself a little because I wanted the job, blah blah blah." He goes, "No, I think you'd be surprised." And I was like, "What do you mean?" Oh my God. So then he proceeds to tell me that they had just done a commercial for Nike where they had puppets of Kobe and LeBron made. And somehow or another, this guy, he was telling me that they had ended up spending about $40,000 a piece on these puppets. Yeah. Now, please, anybody listening to this, please do not think that when I build a puppet, it's worth $40,000. Okay. That's just not how this gig works. There is a market value for puppets, but it's all about what level are you building on.
If they're looking for that price range, I don't think they would go to an independent artist.
They didn't. They did not.
Like Animax or Henson directly.
They went to Henson.
Yeah.
They did. They went to Henson. But that's why I'm telling you, don't get it confused. Don't think that I'm sitting in my house making $40,000 puppets.
Don't think that about me either. Okay. But before you go on with that, so what if you're comfortable sharing it, what was that price at that time that was way too low? They said that you shouldn't be charging that low. Do you remember?
I charged them $1,600 for the 2 identical puppets. Yeah. And it amounted to about $800 a piece. And I mean, I made almost no profit on the thing, but I was so excited just by the idea of getting the gig. But yeah, when he took me aside and told me that, I mean, I literally could have fallen to the floor. I mean, I almost felt sick at my stomach. You know,
Yeah.
I could have. I hate to be this
That's
way.
a year's salary for a lot of people.
That's a year's salary if you're doing all right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you're not scraping the bottom of the barrel at $40,000 a year.
Yeah.
Anyway, you know, but I tell people all the time, I love what I do. I'm so lucky to do what I do. I keep the lights on. I have never really been broke in my adult life. I've never struggled to pay a bill, but I live in a 3-bedroom trailer that is also my puppet workshop. You know,
Yeah.
I don't live in the lap of luxury, but I sure as hell enjoy it.
Yeah. No, that's great, you know. And actually, I'm just going to put that up as a banner thing. If we can just, this should be, you know, we've just gone over an hour, so we should start to wrap up.
Oh my gosh.
Crazy. The last thing that we'll just talk about, which ties in completely with that one experience you were talking about, is about pricing your puppets, because it's something that I actually did a whole video on YouTube. If you type in like Krutinger, how much does a puppet cost into YouTube, it should come up. I think I had a lot of good advice of things that have worked for me in the past, but I was interested to hear your experience of how do you go about pricing something.
Experience, and that's an unfortunate answer because it's not one that helps anybody that's new. But
Puppet building experience you're talking about, or just experience of trying to price things for projects?
Experience of pricing, it's both, but
Yeah.
the experience of pricing things to clients will give you so much more insight. Like I said, I had that interaction with the KFC people, but by the same token, let me tell you this too. CBS contacted me. I shouldn't say this. CBS contacted me to do puppets of all their March Madness anchors. And this was in 2016. This is when they first had this idea. And they came to me and I told them that I wanted $10,000. There were 5 puppets. That was only $2,000 a piece for puppet caricatures of their March Madness anchors. And they wanted them in like 3 weeks, right? My price point was
very fair.
More than reasonable. Yeah. And CBS sent me an incredibly nicely worded email telling me that they appreciated my expertise, but that they could not afford it.
Yeah.
And I just thought, well, look, it doesn't matter what you price a puppet at to somebody. Not everybody's going to take on it, but that's how you keep yourself.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's because like if there was for a CBS like production of a show, they'd probably fork out that much money.
Or no doubt.
It sounds like they were just going to be using this as kind of like a gag.
It was a gag. But then the next year, whatever. The next year they went and had those puppets rebuilt by somebody else, and now they're using those puppets every single year at March Madness.
And that's why.
And I think if they would have realized at the time that they would have been such a big thing and that they would have had the longevity that they do, I think that they wouldn't have balked.
Yeah. And that's a big, like for me personally, and again, I'm lucky to be in this kind of a position where I can kind of decide which projects I do and don't want to take, because I'm not a full-time puppet builder. I have a job, and this is just a passion of mine that I take very seriously. And I do sell puppets and get a rate that I'm happy with, but again, I don't depend on that. So I like a project like that. I wouldn't even. I just like a pet peeve of mine, like gag, when they do gag stuff. Oh, and almost any time someone wants a caricature puppet, 90% of the time it's going to be for a cheap gag on something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I cringe whenever I get those. Again, I'm not belittling it though. I mean, I understand there's a time and place for it. And I give a lot of respect to people who do caricature puppets, and I have done them before. I don't really enjoy it though, but I just know for me, it is just not something that I enjoy doing. I always send them to Barry Gordimer. Yeah,
he's great. He's fantastic.
You want a caricature puppet? Talk to Barry. We're going to bring Barry on here too at some point as well.
He's fantastic.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's amazing. But I do think we should wrap up. Are there any final words that you want to give to people who are watching?
No, I really just want to thank everybody for tuning in. I know things are hard right now, but we're all stuck at home together, and I'm so glad that you chose to tune in and to ask questions, even if your questions didn't get read on air. Thank you so much, Adam. It was a ton of fun. I would love to do this again anytime.
Yeah, we'll definitely do it again. Awesome, man. Well, yeah, again, well, guys, thanks again for sticking that out with us. It was a little longer than I expected. Let me know if you think you kind of like the longer version or if you think we should try to keep these a little shorter. I think I initially expected this to go for like 20 minutes, but now we're an hour and 9 minutes in. So again, let us know, and thanks a lot for stopping by, guys.